All right, so over in Oroville, California, it is June like 25th. I don't know. It's a Monday, 2019, around 6:20. All right, so wanted to make a video blog, drama blog, and I like outside, even though there's people sometimes walking around making noises and doing their thing. I felt like getting outside and not being in my truck. So this is a continuation of kind of what I've started talking about, but didn't really. I'm writing blogs, and so I'm kind of doing writing and doing these video vlogs. But one that really bothered me before I get into some other stuff. I finally got the fountain, right? I ordered it online, and which was crazy, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's a good artist, and from what I could tell, it was in 2006 that they put it out. So, and the way that, like I said, the way they worded it was pretty similar to what I had submitted. And when I went to Image, it was like around 2004, 3, 4, I'm not sure. But it was like, I'm pretty sure it was a book that I had made for that comic convention that I went to with Voice magazine. And I had been living in San Fran with the girlfriend that I was with. So so I'm not sure how long it would take to draw this up and whatnot. So from what the guy said, the director, he said he was working on it for 6 years prior and whatnot. So either we just made super similar synopsises of the idea and same content, other than one being from the Spanish point of view and the other being from the Mesoamerican point of view, and same thing with the characters. So this artist actually, they're both white dudes. No bad thoughts on that. Anyway, so but the characters kind of look, I guess, Spanish, right? But she kind of looks like a Mexican, so I don't know. So the guy has blue eyes, but the Mayan dude is pretty trippy. He has actually, like, there's a Mayan guy. And unbeknownst to me, I actually got, also looks like my tattoo that I got like in 2000, like seriously 2012-ish. I'd gotten this fixed up and whatnot, and you know, it's Aztec stuff and La Raza and all, and it goes up there. So it's kind of like, that's kind of weird by itself. So I'm kind of weirded out as far as the coincidences, but I don't know. I mean, seriously, like, the content is way similar as far as the three worlds. I mean, and what I kind of outlined already about story aspects. But my consensus, I'm pretty sure that if they were lying about when they made it, or if the guy had been working on it or not and didn't get made, and then by the time it got put out and everything like that, it was, I mean, could people take a year to write up scripts? And some people take more, but some people take less, so depending on so there's nothing really it's not the same story, and I had not finished it, so it's really, but you know what I mean, as far as the creators, it's kind of like, man, like someone beating you to the punch. But I gotta say that I had it before those dudes, and the content is different. So I'm gonna keep going with mine, even though that kind of hurts to think that somebody would have done that. So here's Nezihill and Rain. This is actually what I had finished already, and this is when they were just youngsters. And I had more to it, but I added some to it. But I had some of him in the city and whatnot, some like drawings and stuff. So it was all in this book that I printed up with Tales of Scarcity and stuff, and I submitted it to Image Comics, and that was it. Okay, so this is my story, and this is when they're kids. There's a tree in it, and there's like this little girl and living in, and this is more like that Pan's Labyrinth kind of thing going on. And I created another chapter just to even out his chapter and her chapters. And that was that one, and then I finished it up. So this is when they were youngsters in this, and I had added the hummingbird in there because that was I learned about that around 2012ish, but I started painting it like around 2009ish, and then realized how important that was to the story, to the Native American story. And so this is them. So this is most of that I had finished already by that time, which had the poem. But the concept was this concept, and I had not drawn this one till 2009ish. And that's the kiss, which is kind of weird because it's similar to the fountain cover as far as the way she looks and stuff like that. So I was kind of like, what? But like, you could tell it's more Mayan, not really Mayan, Mesoamerican, really Aztec, but I mixed it up in this one. And here's the guy and the girl. So this is the guy and the girl characters. And this is all mostly new artwork. I didn't put in some of the other concept work. So this is the Aztec love story in the Elysium world. Okay, here's actually a drawing. So I did have this drawing. And so I tried to put everything that I had in these books, and there's one more, there's a few like stray drawings that are just hanging around. So this is them that I was working on around 2005, and I had not colored them and stuff like that. So these are some storyboards of them talking. And what I had done is written down the ideas. So the first whole book was written down, and then the overview of the idea, which that's what I think it was used. And so this is actually some drawings I did on my own to kind of get into the world where they kind of mix up the storylines, which was kind of done in the movie, but this was the concept that I had, where it's a dream world where they cross between 3 different worlds, and that's the concept that I think was used. And they used the tree thing. I didn't know nothing about the tree of life idea, so that wasn't something that but that's something that people think about when they think about the Mayans and the 2012 stuff. And so that's the concern of the Nazis and stuff like that. The Nazis are the ones that are really into that folklore and looking for that. They're in South America looking for the Holy Grail and whatnot, all that stuff in Indiana Jones. But and then Jewish people are also involved in that whole scenario of god stuff. It's part of their culture. So there's a whole thing of that, which I learned later too, like around those 2009, 2012 era. On the internet, I learned a lot about what people were thinking and doing about that folklore. So this is something that was done for Fifth Son that they rejected, and I told him I was going to use it in my Nezzy Hill and Rain book, and the guy was like, all right, do what you want, which was an email, so I'm pretty sure it's all good, unless I mean, I don't know, he never finished paying me for it, so I'm not quite sure. It's been like 10 years already, so so I'm not sure if, like, because he did copy it, like make copies of it, and so I'm not sure if what he did with the actual work. So I reworked it and fixed it up and cleaned it up and finished it. And originally I was just going to give him a black and white book, and so I think I added that page, added these pages. So it's basically, I tried to work it the best I could with this girl, with this love story. You know, I was gonna go full Aztec, but this is kind of like left it open to interpretation. It's more dreamy still. So this is, originally she had got a knife and killed herself, right? Because she was pregnant with a spawn of whatever, you know. I hadn't really thought of the story too much, but it was the skeletons and stuff. But the thing with this is, you know, it was so tough to come up with a storyline that I think that's maybe what he didn't like. I don't know, but anyway, so that was, see, there's a white man coming to the American shores. So instead I added a butterfly to represent her soul, because the idea, like I said, was, I guess I did do the Romeo and Juliet before I, you know, it was a love story between, but this guy was kind of more Guatemala kind of guy. But anyway, so it's all mixed in there now. We'll see. And then this was what I was working on during that time, after 2000. That other work was done around 2004 or 5. So this was done in like 2006 and 7. And it's more about the actual characters in the third world, where they're in a post-apocalyptic kind of world. You know, the one where she's rich and he's poor, kind of thing. Kind of going into the Romeo and Juliet kind of love story thing. So still have yet to get into it, but these are the details. Or they're already together, you know, are already falling in love and whatnot. And then they're still crossing between worlds, so I'm creating the world around them. There's the neighborhood bully. They actually know each other. I have to go into their story. It's a lot of stories, so I just tried to get it done the best I could to show the 3 different worlds, because I had only done one, and so I try to make it make sense together so I can show somebody with what I'm thinking. And then there's some poetry, some of the original Poet King's words, and some artwork from that era. And this is drawings that I had done already, so this was what was already finished. So I just cleaned it up and printed it. And that is it for these 2 books, and this is all I got, other than some new watercolor kind of art books that I'm doing for a third installment. So I kind of halted on that story because it's a lot of work, and there's obviously a lot of turmoil that is going through at the moment, and I have to find something cheaper to print up, and all this other stuff came up, so that I have to deal with other than the books that I had started. So I just finished those, finished Tales of Scarcity, finished some other fiction books. So this is what I want to talk about next, and that Poet King leads into this Tales of Scarcity, right? And so Tales of Scarcity is interesting because it was a story that me and my brother had worked on for a long time, and with all the controversy that got started from other issues, all this stuff is also included. People try to turn these stories into my story and all this weird stuff. So it's like, so now I have to take these last 5 years dealing with all these people and their shenanigans and cover-ups and whatever. And I really do think like there's something to these storylines that have been reinvented by the corporations. These people that actually have these movies and books and whatnot made. So I mean, it's too much coincidences. That's just one coincidence. So this is another one, which is Tales of Scarcity, and this is the history of this story. Is I just let that ice cream man pass by. This guy, like, I think he's like a Hindu or something, or not a Hindu, but like a Middle Eastern guy. I don't know what a Hindu is, but and I always see him like, so I don't know if they're trying to be funny or if there's a guy just making ice cream, but it's kind of like a weird van looking thing. Anyway, so this story was created at the beginning of high school. So when I was in high school, around my freshman or sophomore year, I took in economics. And in economics, they had a word named scarcity. And I was like, and I liked the name because it said city in it. So, and Scar, so it was pretty dark, and that was kind of a place to go, like Metropolis. I don't know if Sin City had came out around that time, but I think Image was just around at that time. So I don't think Sin City. I think Sin City came out a little bit later, and I was like, kind of like, oh man, people are gonna think that's the name that we're using, but it wasn't. So, and Sin City refers to like, I think Las Vegas or something. So anyway, so this is different. So this is, what do you call that? Apocalyptic world, like a after World War III kind of thing. And it has to do with the scientist, that guy right there, and a super artificial intelligence computer creation. And the way it was created was a collaboration between me and my brother. At the moment, I'm thinking that there might be some issues. And during that time when I went to art school, I remember a few comments that he was making that, that's kind of this freaking cliche between creators, like who did what and who made what, and people taking credit for this and that. So I'm not sure. The Nezihl and Rain story was something that I initially brought in. I was like, hey, you know what? After all these creations were thought of and created after high school, like that, those guys I had started drawing at the end of high school. I started drawing Nezihl and Rain and creating that idea. I hadn't even had. I got the idea my first year in college of the guy's name, so, or something like that. Yeah, so I remember it was in college when I first saw a book reading about the guy. So, and that has its own story, so I'm not going to get into that yet. But so these guys were already thought of, and I figured I'd bring those guys in because kind of try to fit it in, but the worlds never work together because this is a specific time and a storyline, and this other guy, Neziel, is like throughout time, and his story doesn't fit into scarcity, though the idea scarcity kind of fits in. But so I was kind of reluctant to add it in. And the difference, I gotta say, is that, you know, all these characters we worked on together, and I'm gonna talk about that in a moment. And Neziel and Rain's story, my brother kind of he was never really involved in that storyline at all. So so that's kind of why I felt fine taking it out of the Tales of Scarcity storyline and just keeping it to the core the main characters. And the thing with, okay, so that's number one as far as the difference of Neziel and Rain and Tales of Scarcity. And I did take them out. I don't know if there's going to be an issue, especially with all this other stuff, like this the stuff of, you know, freaking Hollywood taking some of these ideas and using them. So that's different. So Tales of Scarcity is something that I had originally did some drawings of them in the storyline. I think I don't know where, hold on a second. So this was one of the original drawings that me and my brother did. And I drew the pencils, and I drew the inks, I inked it, and he spent the night coloring it, and it turned out pretty awesome. So that was a cool collaboration. But that's kind of, this is what I think Heroes came off of. I mean, and there's an issue with us using the guys in the role-playing characters that my brother's friends used to play, and I was included into the game. Were these pre-made characters that were pretty much like X-Men characters, and what we did was evolve them. What we did was didn't really use the concept because everything was like X-Men. Loved X-Men. Everybody loved X-Men at that time, and so what they were doing during that time was, there was a guy, Brian Eastis, and he was a cool dude, you know, like a white kid that was my brother's age, maybe a year older, I don't know. But they were all nerds, and they all like would get comic books and listen to rock and roll music, and my brother was a drawer, so he would draw, and so they would make stories, and so they had like different ones. They had ones where I'd be included when I was like 13, 12, 13, and I got to go hang out with them while they were hanging out and babysitting. So I got to go and play these role-playing games with them and stuff, and it was cool. It wasn't like all character sheets or nothing like that. It was more just imagination and dice, you know, a couple of dice, like 20-sided and a 6-sided, and that was my first introduction to that, and it was freaking cool. Brian had a great talent for making up stories and storylines like that, and so they had different like places you can go. Like you can just be included, have a character, not have to develop a character. You could just be a character. Like go into this world like Wolverine, and you could be Hulk, or you could be Juggernaut, or you could be Superman, or you could be Batman or Flash, or anybody you wanted to, and you're already there. You know, you're a character. You'd be the Ninja Turtles, and so they mixed up all the superheroes in the same world, and that's where these characters were. You know, they were hanging out with the X-Men. By the time I got there, they were already like in the X-Men mansion and hanging out. So it wasn't something that was taken seriously, I don't think, but maybe they did, I don't know. So they had one where you could be in Robotech, and world, and then there was one where you could choose your own mecha and all this stuff like that. It was cool. And then the other one where Dungeons and Dragon kind of world, and you can pick like a Dungeons and Dragon kind of character. Or there was another one where like it was Hell on Earth or something, and it was like just these stories that were cool that you can just jump into, like a Mad Max kind of world. And it was, so I got, we got to do all that. But I was into superheroes, they were into superheroes, so a lot of the times we would just do superhero storylines, and it was like 5 of us, and we would all just kind of like say what we did. Oh, I'll run over here, and it was cool. But so these characters that everyone had these characters that that were there. I don't know. I picked one, which was a guy named Blurb, and he was like a Flash guy, right? I guess he was black, and so these were thought out because I didn't know who the character was. So he was a black guy that ran fast like Flash. There was another guy named Kid. I think his name was Kid. I don't know what his powers were. And that was Brian's character. And then there was like this guy Livewire, which was my brother's character, and that was like, some electricity guy. And then there was another guy named Still Justice, and that was Greg's character, Greg Eastis' character, and he was kind of like a Colossus. And then there was and he had telepathy powers, he had telepathic powers. And then there was this Cat's Eye, which was a name from New Mutants, but the guy used it, and he was a half cat, half human guy. And that was kind of like a Nightcrawler. And then there was, who else was there? There was 2 girls, AC/DC. Actually, I don't think their name was AC/DC. I don't know if there was 2 girls actually, now I think about it. And then, what else? Oh yeah, Dreamscape. So Dreamscape was like this, which was this guy named Vic's character, and Victor Nunez. And that guy was like a magnetism, like Magneto, and that was it. I think pretty much that was it. So when I walked in, they were like, "Hey, you have to take this character, and be this character." So when we started talking about it later, I was like, "Oh, you know what? That would be cool to like." And what my brother would have like these drawings of like these different characters, or just drawings. He'd always draw different stuff. And so I would always pick up these drawings and be like, "Oh, dude, like, who's this guy?" Or and then he'd be like, "Oh," and he'd make up something like, "This is this guy, like G-Man." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then, so then I would start talking to him, and we would kind of start making a character, like a character profile on who the character was, right? So I'd be like, "Oh, well, how about if he's a cop or something?" And they'd be like, "Oh," and then we'd be like, "Oh," and we'd kind of go, and we'd move, and we'd kind of build it up. And this lasted for years. Like, we would build these characters up, like, "Oh, what about this?" And what if G-Man goes over here? And so we try to integrate all these characters. One of the main 2 characters was Snowman and Scarecrow, which, were these 2 guys that he had drawn. And I was like, "Oh, those guys look cool. Those guys are like ninja guys." And so I was like, "Well, what if we gave them powers? Like, what is that power and stuff?" So we kind of, and what he would do, he would take these ideas from movies and other stories and characters, like I think that one might have been Fire and Ice. I don't know, but and he would just change it up and kind of make his own characters. And so he was always doing that, and at the time I was just like, trying to make an original comic book with them and kind of see where we can take it. And because we would draw together, so I'd draw sketches, and then he would draw, he'd ink them or whatever. And so we were doing that. We draw like normal superheroes, you know, like Juggernaut fighting Superman and stuff like that. We did a Lobo and Wolverine fight before they even thought of it. Like, it was cool. Like, our drawing, that actual drawing was one of the cool ones that we did. Giant picture. His cross hatching was really cool. His inking was really cool at that time. So we brought in these ideas of these characters that we had played in the role-playing game, and be like, oh well, because you know these guys are our friends and stuff. So we're like, oh well, shoot, like let's the original idea. Okay, so these characters didn't have any storylines, and that's the idea. So there was kind of homage to this era that was cool, you know, and to his old friends that half of them he never saw or really never hung out with anymore or whatever. A couple of them, or one of them, came over a lot, like Brian or Greg and stuff. So like I said, they were kind of like X-Men characters. So they were kind of generic characters. So what happened was that we melded them into a new storyline and new characters. We kind of kept the names just to reference them, but you know, then it started becoming more real, the more we drew them and stuff, and made these stories and all this stuff that I was like, man, you know, first of all, I was like, they're not going to even call each other those names, like, because we wanted to make it more real than superheroes, you know, like walking around calling yourself Superman, like that doesn't, or Batman or whatever, that's not the storyline. You know, the storyline was more storyline kind of like Heroes, where, you know, these dudes find themselves in this place in the world, and with these powers, and then they have to like destroy the supercomputer and save, and anti-government, not really anti-government, but anti like one world government kind of stuff, you know? And that's what they were doing, you know. So really they were inspired by the characters, but they weren't exactly the story. The stories are not the same. Like a Superman that's not really Superman. So that's how I feel about that. I mean, I'm not sure exactly, because I kind of got the idea that Victor and maybe some of the other guys were like kind of like, hey, those are, you know, wanted a piece of the pie or something. So I don't know. I mean, like, there is a pie. I don't even know if there's a pie. But, you know, I want to continue making these stories, but like, I'm not sure if everybody's getting crazy. I mean, they're easily changed. The world is going to still be the world. But I don't even know if I have issues with my brother to even like, because really, like, he did come up with a lot of storylines, but I think he might forget how much I contributed. So, because at the time when I went to art school, he's like, "Oh, keep all my characters and you can do whatever." And I was like, "What the hell, dude?" Like, because I've always wanted to keep working on the stories, and honestly, like, I got him to draw this stuff, like, and I finished this Ugly Man story for him, and you know, it was tough just to get him to draw stuff, and he did do a lot of work. I looked on this work now, and I'm like, wow. So the battery story is actually a drawings that he did. I had nothing to do with, and this character was actually, you know, a couple characters that I saw him draw, and I was like, whoa, dude, what are those guys? And so kind of he named them and stuff, and I was like, well, and I don't think this guy was the guy. I think he was just some side drawings that he had done, you know, because at the time he would draw like little comic book stuff, and they would just never be finished. So I was like, so I'd get them and be like, oh, you know. So I added this guy and turned him into the battery guy, which my brother had named him Battery and Blade Runner, which was this other guy, this green dude. I don't know if he's in there. He's actually in here. So there's So when I saw these guys, I started drawing them. This is actually one of the first drawings I did of them. I reworked it and stuff. So same thing with this guy. I saw him. He was a ninja dude with the mask, and I was like, whoa, who's that guy? So I kind of adopted these dudes and kind of turned them into, this guy I turned into a story, but then I changed the story, so that's not really. So the story, it gets complicated. That's what the thing is. I'm not going to tell everybody what the storyline is, but there is more to it than just a superhero world, or this technology this apocalyptic world. There's more going on. So this is the first two characters, and kind of made a storyline, or not the first. It was this Battery and Blade Runner, and I was like, hey, how about? And so what I did in my sophomore year, I was like, oh well, what about like Tales of Scarcity? Because we both liked, like there was these Tales from the Crypt, or Tales of Astonish, or Tales of, there was all these like movies or comic books, these pulp books that came from, that had that title. It was like one of those Twilight Zone kind of stories, books, or whatever. So I was like, oh, it's kind of homage to the old books that I wanted to get to, kind of like, and him too. We both had the same idea of like trying to get to these vintage sci-fi era and tell it from this raw point of view, before all the superhero glitz and all this stuff like that. Not make a superhero at all, really. And this was something a little different at the time. At the time, there was Wolverine was popular, and Image comic books came out, so they were still doing like people in costumes and stuff like that. So we were kind of there, but doing more tech stuff. I don't know. Anyway, so I was like, hey, how about Tales of Scarcity? And he was like, oh yeah, that's a good. So we went with Tales of Scarcity. So that was a contribution that I brought in, and we agreed on, and this was like I said, most of these characters that he had drawn, and I was like, hey, so this is the main characters. So I hear there's Snowman and Scarecrow, which he kind of came up with the mask idea. It was kind of Spawny, like Spawnish, and I was like, eh. But I wanted to pull it into the more era. I didn't really like Spawn. I didn't really like the storyline of Spawn, because I didn't want to deal with that stuff. But I did, like these characters, and they were more like the Crow and stuff, which I hadn't really gotten into Crow, but I think the movie might have been out already. But maybe not. Actually, I don't think it was out yet. But it was kind of, I kind of reworked that. I just drew whatever he drew. I kind of like did my version, and then we'd make up a story. So I always tried to concrete everything, and he was always kind of like, yeah, whatever. So I added this guy, which we never used yet. So that's like Silverback Ape or Gorilla. I don't know. We never really gave him a name, but he's kind of like in the same world of these guys, where they've, it's like this. So what I did was make a map, and I made this map of like of the world, and I put in what would happen if there was a third world war, and went to Africa, and never really talked about the Middle East, because the Middle East wasn't popular at the time, so I didn't really have any idea of what would happen there, because it was like the Philippines. I didn't know nothing about it. But I went to America, North America, South America. I went to Europe. What would happen in Europe? What would happen in Australia? What would happen in like Africa, and in Asia? So some of these characters represent those areas, and this guy is African kind of guy, and he's like all this stuff that was happening in Africa as far as mining and the jungle, right? So this guy came out a little after, and my brother added him to the Javelin story, and it's not really Javelin. I guess they just renamed him. I don't know, Gublok. I don't know what his name. So I kind of go with him. We have names for these characters, and we change it up, right? So these guys originally were based off those role-playing guys, but we added some characters and changed it up. So the guy that was fast is not really fast. I didn't like that idea. I was like, well, that's kind of boring, and that's like, so he became like a clone of the smart guy, which not longer the smart guy. He was actually the scientist. And then, like I said, I kind of left my brother to the names of these stories, of these characters. So the idea of these characters are kind of like there are these genetically enhanced humans from grandchildren of these genetically enhanced experiment that this genius scientist was working on, during all this time. It was his own sleepers, like his own people that he was his own little secret weapon, but his main character, or his main creation, was this supercomputer. And the supercomputer, the idea that and this is, threw it in there, this is the main storyline, and the thing with this guy was that it's AI. This is before AI was even, like, Terminator was out and stuff like that, but nobody, we're in a place where this, people were actually thinking about all this stuff. So this guy is man wanting to be like God, right? So that's the idea, is that man wants to be like God. So we put on the spiritual idea. So it was pretty deep stories, like, something that we haven't explored yet, but that is the main story, like man wants to be God. And when you create AI, they want to be like man. So there's this, like, who created who first. So it goes pretty deep into that story. And so I finished what happened with these ones. So I finished this one. This one was like kind of a mixture of all these short stories. And The Ugly Man was a story my brother had wrote. He never finished it, so I went and drew it up and then had to finish the story, and which is kind of, I was never really happy with the way it ended, but it was the beginning of my writing, finishing up the story. It's always tough to finish up somebody else's story, so I kind of did it. And then this was Battery Story, which I was like, oh, I'll use them for, the battery story, and then which kind of makes sense, and so I put the words in there and colored it and got it in the computer and got it done. And then the G-Man story was probably in my 20s, and I wanted to work on it, so I went and sketched it up, put the words all down, made a storyline, and sent it to my brother, and he drew it, or he inked it. And so then I scanned it and colored it and got it all together and put it in a book. And then this one was originally called Red Devil, but I didn't really have a name for him. He was kind of like this, he was going to be in the Neziel story with the bad guy, for like this king in the fairy tale world, where there's a big old storyline of these kingdoms that are fighting each other, and he's a bad king, and Neziel goes and plays music, and they all, like, he makes them turn into a good guy. But basically just the idea of power, so I added the cup in there as kind of like the fruit of knowledge, right? So it's a metaphor of fruit of knowledge, and I guess I made the girl the bad guy, which kind of, I don't know why I did that. The idea was that, it's for mankind, like it's I guess the Adam and Eve story, but not really. I mean, it was more of a metaphor for mankind, right? So I drew up this story. It was all black and white, and so, like I said, the original drawing was him as a ninja guy. So I kind of changed it up, and then as I took away the storyline of Neziel from even in this world, I was like, so I put this in the story. I finished, because I had drawn it, and I thought it was a pretty cool story. At the time, I was just trying to draw stuff so I could show Marvel and tell a story, do backgrounds, and practice up on the art form. And so that's what that was about. but I like the story. All these pretty self-contained stories, so that works in that. Still not sure how I'm going to even integrate them into the scarcity story, but so we'll see. And this is the second part of Battery, which my brother had drawn already, and so maybe we had talked about. This was later though, so I don't know what it. So he created. So he must have had the idea that Battery was a Battery story. So so it has a scientist in there, and so he never really finished it. And I was like, so I went in there, and I could never get him to draw stuff like I said. Sometimes he would, but most of the time he wouldn't. So he would be like, oh, that's old, and blah blah blah. So basically I went in there and cleaned it up as best I could without totally redoing it, and bam, this is what the first book is about. So it's a bunch of short stories that kind of have B characters in the book, none of the main storyline. And then, other than the smart guy kind of building these guys up here and there, or the scientist or whatever, he needs a name, I don't know. I don't like any of the names my brother gave him. But the consensus was that he was going to be Middle Eastern. I think my brother later on tried to pull it into the Mesoamerican thing, but I wanted him to be Middle Eastern for some reason. I don't even know why. Maybe the Jewish thing, Einstein thing, I don't know. And then this is the second Tales of Scarcity, which was one storyline that I was working on. These Snowman and Scarecrow for a really long time. I was drawing them out and trying to get it done, and so I spent a lot of time on these just as a youngster, and so I really wanted to finish it. So what I did was went in there and finally got them together, and they were watercolored at the beginning, so I finally got them scanned, found the ones that I'd been missing, and tried to clean them up the best I could. And I don't know why it took so long to get these done. I did get him to ink, drew some pages and had him ink the origin of the character, since I really felt these were his creations. As far as original creation, even though I added a lot of ideas to him, I kind of let him have free reign in where he wanted to take them. But as far as collaboration on these pages, I really kind of just made up the story and finished the words, and kind of went my own way with what I felt it needed, So I tried to make, like I said, make everything concrete and make it like a finished story. So whatever you put on the page, it now becomes the origin story. So later on, he was like, I'm gonna make my own version. So that's where we're at with that. So I don't know. So anyway, so I kind of created these other characters to go along with it, and then in art school, I was like, oh man, I gotta draw some comic books again. So I started drawing some these pages and try to do cities and as much detail as I could, and with not a lot of time, but try to make cool drawings out of it so that I can get some comic book work. And then that was a double spread, and kind of just finished this book, like. Then I had, when I was drawing the G-Man, I drew this other story and kind of added it into Zadok, and it doesn't really make sense other than what it is. And that was like, there was like a submission thing that was like, hey, create this storyline. And so I kind of started sketching it, and just never turned it in. And so then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna finish it for myself, and I later made a story around it. So it was really kind of abstract. I kind of went my own way and just kind of finished it. So that's the two books that I got finished, which has a little bit of my brother's work in it, but mostly I have to finish it. So, Tales of Scarcity art book. So the submission, when you submit stuff to Image or whatever, gotta have something like this, but probably better, like as far as more words and all this stuff. So anyway, so I've kind of did all these drawings, and these are some old drawings. This is concept drawings. And this is this other storyline of these characters my brother made up, which he made up the title and everything. Until There's a Supernatural. I drew 5 pages of kind of just doing what I kind of did, is just go start creating a whole new other story, or creating what he says or we had talked about, and then kind of working it and creating this storyline. But I never, those pages, if he has them somewhere. But so I kind of try to draw all the characters together. I had Nezuko and Rain in there, but I took them out, and try to make a like one of those pages where everybody's in it. So I was always working on that stuff. And so I drew these characters in the new version of how I'd like them to look, and less imagey, and then try to get these characters on the page, and then start drawing like them as their new versions. And like I said, we had changed up the stories a lot. So these guys, kind of Cyclops dude, leader of the guys, and then, but everybody has to have powers, and so this girl's not genetically enhanced. She's part of the storyline where she's like a secret agent, and also set there to destroy the supercomputer. Honestly, like, there's a lot to the characters, but none of them are solidified. This guy, so these guys, still like a electronic or energy guy, but actually drew him, so worked off my brother's sketches. And then this is a guy, a blur kind of dude, but instead of like being black or anything, he's actually Middle Eastern, and he's this clone, and he doesn't know that. And instead of like super speed or anything like that, I wanted to give him something more interesting and more special, and that was actually time traveling kind of thing going on. But not even time traveling, it's like it's the ability to move through space and time, but he doesn't know how to control it yet. So it becomes important in the storyline later. So, and he's a smart guy, like nerd, super. They got characters actually, like real. And then this girl's like a part of the storyline, but she's a normal human, and she's more Puerto Rican, and then she's kind of like a smart Kitty Pryde kind of character, but she's actually more the human side to the story. And this guy is actually a clone as well, which is related to the other guy, but he's a half cat, like he's cloned from a cat, so he has weird issues. And then this guy's a star, a living star that's gonna implode. And then this guy is more of a go-between to the worlds, the dimensions of space and time. So instead of like a magnetism guy, he was more a spirit spook kind of thing going on. I don't know. So it goes on and on. Gonna run out of 54 minutes. So we go on, and I drew these characters in action, moving around, fighting each other, and then did like a 5-pager thing with these guys actually being moving around in the world. So that's the story of the Poet King, Nezuko and Rain, and the story of Tales of Scarcity and the issues that might happen or might not happen, who knows, but the kind of origin and my version of some of that stuff. So I'll move on and talk about something else. Peace.